I remember the first time I dipped my toe into a real online RPG. It was EverQuest Online, right? And I was this tiny level 1 wood elf, probably staying just outside Calithin, you know the
Oh
place.
yeah, classic starting zone.
And the scale of the world, it just hit me immediately. Like, whoa! I saw this huge shadow fall across the screen right in front of me, and then this enormous, almost like cartoonish boot just plops down.
Giant.
Yeah, like straight out of Monty Python's opening scene, this giant just cruises past, didn't even see me. I was like completely insignificant. An ant.
That's the feeling they were going for, definitely. Making you feel tiny in this huge, dangerous world. That giant marching past, totally oblivious.
Probably oblivious. And I thought, okay, this is epic. This feels like a real place. But then, like moments later, the danger hits for real. I aggroed a bear.
Oh no, not the newbie zone bear.
A monstrous grizzly, way, way too high level for little level 1 me. I panicked, obviously, and just started running. I ran for what felt like 10 real-world minutes, just pure panic.
Yep, I remember that feeling, just legs pumping, heart pounding.
Exactly, until I finally stumbled across this small, kind of rickety-looking house. I bolted inside, slammed the door, thinking, okay, safe. Nope.
Yeah.
The bear just tears the door off its hinges, lumbers in, and, well, you know, mauled me to death.
Ouch. And the corpse run.
Respawned all the way back in Calithin, naked, lost everything. That whole experience, the awe, the panic, the sheer unforgiving nature of it, that stuck with me.
That panic, that raw adrenaline, the sense of real lost time, progress, everything. That is the experience that really defined that whole era of online gaming, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The world felt utterly indifferent, even hostile, and death.
Yeah.
Death meant real, like tangible punishment. That anxiety is something a lot of modern, more streamlined games that they kind of intentionally design out.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. Hope you all had a fun and safe Halloween. It's a new month, and keeping with our tradition of exploring some outlier topics on the first Deep Dive of the month, tonight we're going to be diving deep into the world of CRPGs, computer role-playing games.
And what better place to start than, well, where it all began. We're talking about MUDs, multi-user dungeons.
That's right, MUDs. It's easy to forget now, but they weren't just the first computer games to really successfully adapt D&D rules and that whole feel into a digital format.
They were more than that. They were the absolute pioneers of what we now call MMORPGs, massively multiplayer online role-playing games. They pretty much wrote the playbook.
It's wild when you think about it. Today, you've got so many options, right? Grand open worlds like Elder Scrolls, deep narrative games like JRPGs, direct D&D translations like Baldur's Gate 3.
Or even just playing traditional TTRPGs with your friends online using virtual tabletops. The options are huge now.
But back in the late 1970s, early 1980s, if you wanted that shared, persistent role-playing world experience online, there was really only one way to play.
Yep, you had to somehow get time, usually reserve it, on the school's mainframe or maybe the company's mainframe if you were lucky.
And then you'd jump into the mud, literally.
So our mission tonight, you could say, is to kind of dig into this and ask the big question. Is this whole MUD genre just like an amusing relic, something we look back on and chuckle because it was all text?
Or, and this is where I think it gets really interesting, with the rise of large language models, LLMs, and, text-based role play seeming to make a comeback, are MUDs actually more relevant now, maybe even predictive of where things are heading?
That's the core question. Are they history or are they the future? Let's unpack this, starting with some deep historical context.
Yeah.
Where did these things even come from?
Yeah, that link to the future is fascinating. But okay, you mentioned they were precursors. They had to start somewhere, technologically speaking. Let's trace that lineage. How did we get to the first shared online spaces?
Absolutely. So first, let's just define the genre really simply. MUDs, text-based, real-time online games. Simple as that. And the terminology itself is, well, it's crucial. People forget.
Forget what?
That when the first big graphical games came out, like Ultima Online or your EverQuest story, they were often explicitly called graphical MUs. That was the term. The DNA, the core structure, it was inherited directly from these text-based pioneers.
So MUD was basically the generic term for any multiplayer online RPG back then, whether it had pictures or not.
Pretty much, yeah. The graphics were just an add-on to the core MUD concept initially. But the very first steps towards multiplayer dungeons, they weren't even called MUDs. We have to go back even further to the Plato system.
Plato, okay, I've heard of that. University of Illinois, right? Massive educational network.
Exactly. A huge shared educational network, pre-internet as we think of it today. A national network of terminals, mostly at universities. And this is where we see the earliest D&D-like games popping up, sometimes almost hidden.
Hidden, like illicit code?
Kind of. Back in '75, a guy named Reginald Rutherford wrote Predate 5. It was a pioneering single-player dungeon crawler, really trying to emulate D&D rules, but word is it was sort of contraband.
Contraband.
Yeah, often hidden away. The name Predate 5 supposedly comes from it being the fifth program hidden in the population and energy group file system. Sneaky.
Huh. Okay, so that was single player. How did it go multiplayer?
Well, Predate 5 directly inspired another Plato game called Orthanc, also around 1975, and Orthanc was the first really significant multiplayer dungeon crawl on the system.
Okay, so Orthanc is where people started playing together in these text worlds.
It is. It allowed, potentially tens of thousands of users over its lifetime. The only real limit was the number of physical Plato terminals, maybe around 1,000 spread across the country at universities.
Wow.
And what's really fascinating, what tells you something fundamental about these spaces, is that players often chose to just hang out and chat inside the Orthanc dungeon.
Instead of using other chat programs.
Yeah. Plato had other ways to chat, but the dungeon itself, this shared fantasy space, it became the preferred social hub, the original digital hangout spot.
That's amazing. It's like the birth of the digital town square, but, with potential monsters lurking just off screen. It totally mirrors how online communities form today, right? It's not just the game, it's where everyone gathers.
Absolutely. But the term MUD itself, the official one, that comes later. It comes from Essex MUD, sometimes called MUD1, created by Roy Trubshaw and Richard Bartle in 1978 at the University of Essex in England.
And their inspiration was?
They basically took the brilliance of games like Zork, the classic text adventure.
Yeah, Zork. You are likely to be eaten by a grue.
Exactly. They took that text-based exploration and puzzle solving, but crucially, they bolted on true multiplayer support. And this is the historically significant moment.
When it hit the network.
Precisely. When Essex MUD was connected to ARPANET, the proto-internet, around 1980, it suddenly became the first widely accessible online multiplayer role-playing game.
Widely being relative for 1980, I imagine.
Oh, incredibly relative. Its availability was super limited, which probably just added to the mystique, right? You could often only access it on weekends, or maybe between 2 a.m. and 8 a.m. on weekdays.
Seriously, you had to schedule your life around getting into this text game.
People did.
Yeah.
Because it offered something more than just entertainment. There was a deeper layer, almost a political purpose behind its creation.
The political purpose. Okay, that's side of MUD history I bet most modern gamers have no idea about. Tell me more.
Yeah, Richard Bartle himself, one of the co-creators, stated pretty explicitly that creating MUDs was, in a way, a political act. It was driven by this desire to escape the really rigid determinism of the British class system back in the late 70s, early 80s.
How so? What was the connection?
Well, back then, especially in Britain, your societal identity, your background, your parents, your accent, where you went to school, it basically dictated your entire life path. Your opportunities were heavily constrained by birth.
Right, so the MUD was like a way out.
Exactly. Bartle saw MUDs as these potential worlds where people could actually be their real selves, unconstrained by all the societal baggage and prejudice tied to their physical identity, age, gender, sexuality, class, whatever. In the MUD, you were just text.
Your identity was what you typed.
Precisely. Your success, your status, it was defined purely by your actions, your ingenuity, your interactions within that digital space, not by who your dad was or what posh school you didn't go to. It was genuinely revolutionary for the time, an attempt to build a sort of meritocratic, anonymous, better world.
Wow. That adds a whole different dimension. That utopian ideal kind of fueled the early design. But, okay, that freedom must have bumped up against the harsh reality of the tech back then.
Oh, massively. Which brings us to the big question. Why text-based? Why not crude graphics, at least? And the answer is just severe, almost unimaginable technical limitations. Bandwidth was the killer.
Right. Give us an analogy. How bad are we talking?
Okay, try to picture this. An entire university, thousands of students, faculty, all departments, everything might be sharing a single T1 line.
The T1 line? That's about?
About 1.5 megabits per second for the entire institution.
Okay. And my home internet connection now is?
Your standard home broadband today.
Right.
Easily 100, 200 megabits per second, maybe more, just for you. So we're talking over 100 times faster for one person today than what an entire university had back then to share for all its internet traffic, including running the MUD.
Whoa. Okay, so if you had, say, 50 people logged into the MUD at the same time?
They were splitting a connection that was already slower than like a dial-up modem from the 90s. Sending even basic graphics was completely out of the question. Text wasn't some cool artistic choice. It was the only choice. Absolute necessity.
Right. But that necessity, it forced some incredible innovation, didn't it?
It really did. MUDs ended up pioneering some critical internet functions we just totally take for granted now. They were basically the first widespread way large groups of people could do real-time chat, like instant messaging.
Before AIM or ICQ or anything like that.
Long before. And even in-game email systems. This was way before email was common, outside of, specific academic or maybe corporate networks.
So, hold on. People were logging into a dungeon, which they could only get into between 2 and 8 a.m., maybe just to send a private message to a friend who might be logging in from a terminal across the country?
Absolutely. The game itself was the communication platform. It was the social network, because the dedicated infrastructure for personal messaging just didn't exist for most people yet. The MUD provided the social space and the way to talk within it.
That completely recontextualizes the whole early internet experience. Wow, okay. Let's shift gears a bit. Let's move into the gameplay itself, the mechanics, the community, and yeah, that infamous MUD grind. Because MUDs didn't stay just social experiments, right? They became real games, heavily influencing D&D's move to computers.
Definitely. And that shift, you clearly see moving from a pure roleplay focus towards more combat-centric gameplay. A key point here is the rise of DK Mud around 1991.
DK Mud, what was special about that one?
Well, it came out of the open source community that grew around an earlier one called Abermud from '87. DK Mud's big innovation, or maybe its big focus, was prioritizing hack-and-slash combat. It deliberately simplified the D&D rules, streamlined them for a fast-paced, well, fast for the time, online, persistent world. Less complex RP, more hitting things.
And DK Mud is famous for something else, too, isn't it? Something fundamental to D&D and MMOs even today.
Ah, yes. It's widely credited with really formalizing the holy trinity of party roles.
The tank, the healer, and the DPS.
Almost. The tank and healer, yes.
Yeah.
But the third role originally wasn't quite DPS as we think of it now. It was the Stone Skin Caster.
Stone Skin Caster, so like a buffer.
Exactly. That's a crucial distinction. Their main job wasn't raw damage output. It was primarily buffing the tank. Casting spells like Stone Skin, maybe Haste, other defensive buffs. Their whole focus was increasing the tank's survivability, making them tougher, last longer.
Huh. So the original Trinity was much more defensive, more support-heavy, designed for endurance in what must have been pretty slow, brutal combat.
Precisely. MUD combat was often slow, methodical, and incredibly punitive. If your tank went down, it was usually a wipe. Everybody died. So the support roles weren't just nice to have, they were mandatory for survival.
Makes sense.
It was only later, as computers got faster, connections got better, that the focus shifted. The third role evolved into the nuker, big area of effect damage dealers, and then eventually into the high-speed, continuous damage per second, or DPS, role that we're so familiar with today. The initial design prioritized resilience above all else.
That really highlights a different design philosophy, doesn't it? Slower, more deliberate, because the consequences of failure, like death, were so incredibly painful.
Exactly.
And speaking of pain and high stakes, MUDs were also notorious for really ruthless, high-stakes roleplay, weren't they? And community enforcement. Tell me about the Star Wars Legends of the Jedi MUD. That one sounds legendary.
Oh, it was. It was absolutely legendary for its strict enforcement of roleplay. The moderators, the GMs, they would absolutely bring down the thunder, as they apparently put it, if you broke character. We're talking warnings, temporary bans, even permanent bans for repeat offenders.
Wow. And the game mechanics themselves forced you to stick to the lore
Right?
in some funny ways.
Hilarious ways. Take Wookiees, for example. In that MUD, a Wookiee character literally could not speak basic, the common Star Wars language, unless the player had specifically spent hard-earned skill points to learn it.
No way. So what happened if you didn't have the skill?
Your typed text would just appear to other players as Wookiee noises, like "Rah," Chewbacca sound.
That's amazing. You had to actually invest character resources just to communicate normally. That's a level of dedication to immersion you just don't see anymore. Like in a modern graphical game, you just hit enter and type.
Right. It added this whole layer of realism and, frankly, commitment. And the stakes were amplified even further by permadeath.
Permadeath, the ultimate stake. How did it work there?
High stakes indeed. If your character, let's say a high level 50 Jedi, died on a hostile planet, Tatooine, Hoth, wherever,
Yeah.
they were gone permanently. deleted forever.
Whoa, no respin.
Resurrection only worked on friendly, controlled planets like Corellia or Naboo.
Yeah.
So if you bit the dust out in the dangerous zones, that was it. Your character, all those hours just gone.
Man, that risk.
Yeah.
It must have magnified the fear, the sense of accomplishment, everything dramatically. You had everything to lose on every single adventure. It's like that primal fear from your bear chase story in EverQuest, but cranked up to 11 because it was permanent.
Exactly. It created this incredible tension and investment. But, and this is a big bet, while that high-stakes RP and permadeath could be brilliant, it also fed into one of the core problems of classic MUD gameplay. The predictability.
Right.
Grind.
The infamous grind. How did that become such an issue?
It's almost a fundamental design flaw that MUDs struggled with for decades, and still do in some ways. The classic gameplay loop is just inherently repetitive, isn't it?
Yeah.
Go to the Dark Forest, kill 100 giant spiders, get enough XP to hit level 15.
Yeah, the Kill 10 Rats quest origin story.
Exactly. The input leads to a very predictable output. Do X, get Y experience, and Z gold. Over and over.
And that predictability in an online, persistent world, that creates a toxic loop, doesn't it?
It really does, because if the input and output are so easy to predict, what happens?
Automation, bots, scripts.
Bingo. Players inevitably start using bots and scripts. I heard one developer refer to them grimly as cancer board and scripts to just automate the grind 24/7.
Which completely destroys the game's economy, right?
Right.
And kills community interaction because no one's actually playing.
Totally. It undermines the whole point of playing manually. And this forces the developers into this constant, exhausting arms race against the botters.
They have to add defenses.
Yeah, and also these defenses are really clumsy and immersion breaking. They have to add random encounters that suddenly require manual input or throw at CapTTHAs mid-dungeon.
Wait, CapTTHAs like click all the squares with traffic lights while you're fighting a dragon.
Pretty much, or variations on that idea. And the horrible irony is, these defenses often make the game significantly less enjoyable for the honest players, the ones actually playing manually, just to try and thwart the exploiters who are ruining it for everyone.
Ugh. That sounds like a miserable cycle, a heavy price to pay just to enforce fair play. But MUDs did offer something amazing as a counterpoint to that predictable content, didn't they? Extensibility, player-generated chaos.
Ah, yes. This was the truly brilliant part, especially in certain MUD systems like LP MUDs. They allowed high-level players, often called wizards or immortals, who had earned special privileges.
Privileges like
the ability to actually code new parts of the game world themselves, using a simplified C-like scripting language that was built right into the MUD engine.
Wait, so players could build new zones, new monsters, new items in real time?
The game was literally being built and expanded by its most dedicated players while other people were playing in it. The level of agency, of direct impact on the world was just unparalleled. Nothing like it today, really.
That sounds incredible, but also potentially chaotic?
Oh, it absolutely led to chaos. Glorious, hilarious chaos. Which brings us to the legendary story of the Ronco monster, Succomatic.
What? Okay, you have to explain this. Ronco, like the pocket fisherman guys.
Yeah, named in that spirit. This is a player-created item coded by a high-level wizard purely for mischief. It was basically a device, an item you could carry that could be set to either suck or spew.
Suck or spew.
Monsters. A player, usually a powerful wizard, could go find some incredibly tough, high-level monster. Let's say there was apparently one known as the Terminator monster that would shout, "Are you Sarah Connor?" and just blast people.
Okay.
So you'd find this Terminator monster, target it, and use the suck command on your Succomatic. Whoosh! The monster gets vacuumed up into the device, stored inside this container item.
Okay. So you've captured a Terminator. Why?
Pure high-level trolling. The goal was maximum disruption and newbie agony.
Which you achieved by using the spew command, I'm guessing.
You guessed it. You take your Succomatic, containing one angry Terminator, wander into a really high-traffic newbie area like the starting village pub or the main town square.
Oh, no?
And then you just sent the device to spew, flump. Out pops this massive, unkillable killing machine right in the middle of all the level ones trying to figure out how to type look.
Pandemonium.
Pure anarchy. Mass newbie panic, messages scrolling like crazy, often wiping out the entire starting zone just for the sheer laughs of the wizard who unleashed it.
That player-generated chaos. That's something you just can't get from a perfectly scripted, polished AAA world, can you? It gave these text worlds a personality, a life that was completely unpredictable.
Absolutely. And the legacy of that kind of playful coding, that MUD culture, it carried over directly into modern game development.
How so?
Well, one of the original developers, who was apparently involved in some of these high-level MUD shenanigans, maybe even the Succomatic itself, went on to work on the first Fallout games.
No kidding.
Yeah, and because of a specific, ridiculous old LP MUD anecdote involving a creature called a snow cow, don't ask, that used to wander around a glacial plateau saying, moo moo, I say.
Moo moo eyes.
Yeah, it's just pure player-coded nonsense. Because of that memory, they slipped a tiny Easter egg into Fallout. Occasionally, one of the two-headed Brahmin cows in the game will just randomly emit that exact line, moo moo, I say.
That's amazing. A direct, loving callback to the Wild West days of LP MUDs hidden in a huge game like Fallout. It really shows how foundational these simple text games were for everything that followed.
Totally foundational. Which brings us nicely to the core medium itself, the text. The power of imagination versus, well, the friction of actually using these things, especially for modern players.
Yeah, that's the constant tension, isn't it? MUDs have this incredibly powerful, immersive engine at their core. You know that famous quote, right? Text provides the best graphics ever.
It's famous for a reason. Text descriptions, when done well, they leave so much room for your own mind to fill in the blanks with infinite personal detail. It taps directly into your imagination in a way pre-rendered graphics just can't.
I like that analogy someone used, that graphical games kind of colonize your imagination. Once you've seen Peter Jackson's version of, say, The Mines of Moria or Hugo Weaving as Elrond, you can't really unsee it, can you? That specific image gets burned in.
Exactly. Text actively prevents that colonization. It allows your own private mental garden, your unique visualization, to flourish. Reading a description of a sprawling 50-foot spider dripping venom is arguably far more frightening in text.
Yeah.
Because your brain conjures the most terrifying specific spider for you. It's personalized horror or personalized adventure, but
does that imaginative power outweigh the sheer clunkiness of the interface, the conveyance problem?
that's the struggle, especially for new players today. There's a really simple core design flaw you see in a lot of older MUDs. Monsters often attack the instant you enter a room.
Before you can even read the description?
Often, yeah. Before you can finish reading that beautiful, evocative description of the moss-covered altar room, bam, you're getting wailed on by 3 goblins. It just shatters the immersion that the text was trying so hard to build.
And just navigating. Ugh. Learning a complex world by typing north, south, east, west, up, down, reading room descriptions is brutally inefficient.
Totally. Which is why even many modern MUDs have kind of sacrificed that cartographer fantasy. The joy of mapping the world yourself, maybe on graph paper.
Yeah, I used to do that.
Right. They sacrifice that by just giving new players pre-filled maps or pointing them to external map websites just for basic usability, which kind of tells you the pure text interface on its own struggles with fundamental things like wayfinding in a big world.
So the answer isn't clinging to archaic, frustrating systems just because they're pure. It's about applying smart quality of life fixes, right?
Yeah.
While keeping that imaginative core intact.
Exactly. The solution isn't ditch the text. It's fix the friction around the text.
Yeah.
And we can look at projects like the fan recreation of Shadow of Yserbius called Medieval Lands for some great examples of how you can do this.
What are they doing?
They're adding smart, low-fidelity aids, things like simple on-screen arrows you can click for movement instead of typing N or S, and critically, built-in text-to-speech.
Text-to-speech. That's huge for accessibility.
Massive benefit, especially for visually impaired players who are often excluded from graphical games. MUDs suddenly become incredibly accessible again.
And what about that idea of using hyperlinks within the text itself? That sounds like a potential game changer.
It feels like the most natural evolution for the interface, doesn't it? The suggestion is basically make every interactable thing in the room description object names, monster names, character names, key verbs, a clickable link.
So instead of typing attack goblin 2 or get sword from chest,
You just click the word goblin 2 and choose attack, or click chest and choose open or get sword.
Yeah.
It keeps the rich textual output but massively streamlines the input friction for the player. Less typing, more doing.
That's brilliant. It makes the world feel instantly responsive in a way that staring at a command line in Telnet never could. Okay, let's bring this back to D&D design for a second. If we applied this kind of low-fidelity modernization, how could we use it to represent cool class abilities? Maybe thinking about, like, D&D 5e concepts.
Oh, that's where it gets really clever. You leverage the lack of graphics as a strategic design choice. You use simple game engine scripts to represent actions that would cost a fortune to animate visually.
Give me an example, like a ranger crossing a chasm.
Right. Instead of needing a complex grappling hook animation, the ranger player clicks on the chasm description, selects their use grappling hook skill. The game engine just runs a simple teleport script. Poof, they're on the other side. The text describes the action. You skillfully throw your grappling hook, securing it on the far ledge and swing across. Done. Minimal cost, maximum implied coolness.
Okay. Or like a barbarian faces a locked, flimsy door.
Instead of fiddling with lockpicks, they click the door, choose Rage, then choose Smash Door. The engine runs a simple script that removes the door object, maybe adds some debris description. Text says, with a mighty roar, you splinter the door into 1,000 pieces. Again, simple script implies epic action.
And a wizard just activates teleports.
Exactly. Clicks a room, selects Activate Teleport Circle. Engine runs a teleport script. The low-fidelity nature of the MUD is used to imply rich, class-specific actions that would be prohibitively expensive to show graphically. You tell the player what happened, relying on their imagination, which is way cheaper and more flexible in showing them. The limitation becomes a strength.
It's a super cost-effective way to get massive power expression and really make classes feel different. Okay, speaking of modernizing old games, let's use that recreation you mentioned, Medieval Lands, as our main case study. Starting with the original game it's based on, Shadow of Yserbius.
Right, Shadow of Yserbius, a real pioneer, came out way back in 1991, ran on a service called the Imagination Network. It was one of the very first graphical MUDs, though still heavily influenced by its text ancestors. But its story has a kind of sad corporate ending.
Yeah, you mentioned it got shut down. We need the specifics on that. Why did AOL kill it?
Okay, so America Online, AOL, bought the Imagination Network service. And pretty soon after, they deliberately shut down Shadow of Yserbius. The reason was purely anti-competitive. AOL was launching its own graphical MUD, the original Neverwinter Nights from 1991, the one that required a paid AOL subscription to play. Yserbius was running on the service AOL just bought, and it was direct competition. So they just pulled the plug. Liquidated the asset to clear the field for their own product and ensure Neverwinter Nights had market dominance in that very early graphical online RPG space.
Wow, that's brutal. Killing off an innovative game just for market share. But the game's legacy, its core design, was obviously strong enough that decades later, a passionate fan basically rebuilt it from the ground up.
Yeah, using modern frameworks like .NET Core, showing how you can breathe new life into that old code and structure.
And this fan didn't just rebuild it, they introduced massive quality of life improvements, right? Borrowing ideas from more modern games.
Huge improvements, yeah. Especially drawing inspiration from loot-heavy games like Diablo. They implemented what you might call Loot 2.0, adding those addictive prefix-suffix systems to items.
Like the mighty sword of the whale, that kind of stuff.
Exactly that kind of randomly generated, potentially awesome loot makes finding items way more exciting than just sword plus one.
And they added a way to fight the frustration of bad drops, didn't they? Something about magic find.
Yes, the magic find stat, which is brilliant, really. It doesn't guarantee good drops, but it effectively pushes the chance of getting completely useless, grade-quality vendor trash off the loot table. So if you invest in Magic Find, the game respects your time more, making it more likely you'll get something interesting or useful. A direct evolution from the often painful, purely random drop tables of classic MUDs and early MMOs.
They also seem to focus heavily on transparency, which directly tackles that old MUD problem of hidden mechanics where you never really knew how stuff worked.
Oh, absolutely critical change. They added tooltips everywhere. You hover over an item, you see its effects, its stats, the resistances it provides, information that was previously completely opaque to players in the original game.
How did people figure stuff out back then?
Honestly, through hundreds, maybe thousands of hours of tedious, repetitive testing, like hitting the same monster over and over with different weapons to figure out damage formulas. It was like players had to run clinical trials on every piece of gear.
That sounds awful.
It was. Now with tooltips, the information is just there. It makes building your character a strategic choice based on knowledge, not just a wild guessing game.
And they even managed to retrofit a proper aggro or threat system into that old framework to make group play work better.
Yeah, and it's apparently a pretty simple, elegant implementation. Like, if a tank builds up 114 threat on a monster, that means they basically have 114 chances of being the target of the monster's next attack, compared to, say, a baseline 100 chances for a DPS player who hasn't done anything to generate extra aggro. It's a simple way to ensure the tank usually hold attention, the Holy Trinity functions, and the squishy casters don't get instantly flattened.
That's clever. And they even officially support speedrunning now, on a game based on 1991 code.
Which is pretty remarkable, right?
Yeah.
Shows the core gameplay loop is still engaging. Apparently, the any percent speedrun record is a documented feat, completed in around 2 hours.
So all these changes, the loot, the transparency, the aggro, they really address the friction and the predictability of the old MUD format. But even with all this modernization, they still hit walls, right? Limitations baked into that original legacy architecture.
They absolutely do. The fan developer behind Medieval Lands specifically noted that adding something we take for granted now, a standard detailed quest log, is actually not very easily achievable, even with modern tools.
Why? What makes a quest log so hard to add to an old MUD structure?
It comes down to how the original data was stored. The original game, like many from that era, used a very simple flat data format.
Okay, what does flat data format mean for us non-programmers?
It basically means that different types of data aren't intrinsically linked or related to each other in the database. The monster data is over here, the item data is over there, the NPC data is somewhere else, the room data is separate again. They're just lists.
Right. And a quest log needs.
A modern quest log needs relational data. It needs to know that this specific quest ID 5, requires you to talk to this NPC ID 12, in this room ID 101, then kill these monsters, monster IDs 3035, to get this item ID 500, and bring it back, but only if the player meets these prerequisites. Level 10 plus O faction friendly. See how everything has to be linked together.
Yeah, it's a web of connections.
Exactly. Bolting that kind of complex relational structure onto an old architecture built on simple flat files is incredibly difficult, time-consuming, and expensive. It highlights the real cost of managing technical debt from decades ago.
So even with all the smart QLL fixes, MUDs are still kind of wrestling with the ghosts of 1990s code, which leads us perfectly, I think, to the new frontier, the potential next evolution, the LLM RPG.
This is the really exciting and maybe slightly terrifying newest challenge, and potentially the ultimate promise for text-based gaming. These LNRPGs games using models like Llama 3, GPT-4, whatever comes next, they're designed very differently.
How so?
The core idea is to use the language model itself as a kind of dynamic game master. It judges the feasibility, the consequences, the potential damage of pretty much any command the user types in, on the fly.
So instead of just recognizing pre-programmed commands like attack spider or open chest,
You could type, I try to distract the spider by juggling flaming torches while whistling loudly, and the LLM would assess the likelihood of success based on the context, your character skills, if any are tracked, and the situation, then generate a unique narrative outcome.
Okay, that directly tackles the predictability and grind problem of classic MUDs, right? The thing that led to botting.
Yeah.
Can't easily bot a system that reacts dynamically to unique creative inputs.
Precisely. And some of these systems are even building in incentive structures to encourage that creativity, rewarding unique word usage with a creativity bonus,
Oh, interesting.
and conversely penalizing repetition. Using the same attack over and over might lower your focus stat or incur a repetition penalty. It actively fights the kill 100 spiders the same way mindset. It wants you to be descriptive, to be inventive.
It's like having a flexible, slightly unpredictable dungeon master built right into the game engine, but there's still that reliability issue we hear about, isn't there? LLMs aren't always great at sticking to the hard rules of a game system.
That's currently their Achilles heel, yeah.
Yeah.
It seems to stem from a bias the models have towards narrative coherence. They're trained to sound human, to tell a compelling story.
Which can sometimes override the math.
Exactly. When you ask an LLM to strictly follow hard-coded RPG stat tables for damage calculation or enforce class restrictions rigorously, they sometimes fudge it. They might substitute narrative flavor for mathematical accuracy because it makes for a better story moment in their algorithms.
So you get weird situations.
You see examples where the LLM just fails to calculate damage correctly based on the numbers it should be using. Or even worse, it fails to enforce basic rules, like letting a character described as a non-magical gem bro suddenly cast a powerful fireball because a player typed something dramatic and the LLM thought it sounded cool narratively.
Yikes. That's a huge problem. If the core mechanics, the actual RPG system math, breaks down, the game becomes unplayable for anyone who cares about strategy or consistent rules.
It is. That reliable enforcement of complex, interconnected game mechanics is the major hurdle right now. But the trend is definitely towards improvement. As these models get better at reliability, at referencing external data accurately, they hold this incredible promise. The imaginative freedom and descriptive richness of a MUD, combined with the dynamic interaction and reactivity of a human GM at a tabletop. That could potentially render the static, heavily scripted world the classic MUD kind of obsolete.
It's a fascinating race, isn't it? The stable, community-driven, but perhaps technically burdened classic MUD versus the revolutionary, incredibly flexible, but currently somewhat erratic LLM RPG.
And the history of MUDs tells us these fundamental ideas don't just die out. They evolve. They influence what comes next.
Yeah, that lineage is undeniable. We talked about the original MED developers going on to create foundational AAA games, like the Ultima Online team using MED code concepts as their base.
Or the Fallout devs sneaking in MUD references and ideas. The DNA is there.
And now we're seeing this rise of spiritual successors in gaming generally, right? Like how Bloodstained took the core gameplay loop of classic Castlevania and wrapped it in a modern engine and package. MED concepts seem perfectly ripe for that kind of breakout transition.
Absolutely. Which brings us, I think, to our final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. Given this rise of the LLM RPG and how relatively easy it's becoming to build these spiritual successors today, what core MUD concept do you think is just waiting to be rediscovered?
Yeah, what idea is ready to be broken out of its simple text shell? Is it the high-stakes permadeath, the original, more defensive Holy Trinity structure, the unique social anonymity and community building?
What MUD idea is just sitting there in the primordial ooze waiting for someone to grab it, polish it up, and turn it into the next big, legally distinct, genre-defining successor? What's ripe for revolution today?
Ooh, that is something worth mulling over until our next deep dive. This has been an incredibly fun trip through some really foundational gaming history.
It really has. Amazing how relevant those old text worlds still feel.
Totally. Well, if you enjoyed this analysis, folks, please do remember to like, subscribe, share, and, ring the bell, all that good stuff. We genuinely rely on your support to keep making these deep dives into these fascinating, sometimes obscure corners of the gaming world.
Yeah, absolutely. And please leave a comment below. We genuinely love to hear your own stories. Did you play MUDs back in the day? Have any crazy EverQuest moments like the giant boot? Or maybe tell us which of those MUD concepts you think is ready for a modern comeback.
Definitely want to hear those ideas. And before we sign off, just want to give a quick shout out and thank you to our producer, Ken. He's the one making sure we actually have these documents, that the tech works, and that this whole thing actually reaches you out there. So thanks, Ken.
And also, a massive thank you is due to all the unnamed heroes out there. All the people who take the time to scan, upload, and meticulously preserve these old game manuals, articles, code snippets, everything, on websites like archive.org and FanWikis. Without that incredible preservation effort, so much of this fascinating history would just be lost forever.
Hear, hear. Couldn't do without them. Okay, thank you all so much for tuning in tonight. It's been a blast.
Looking forward to the next one.
Yep. Next week, we'll be getting back to our regularly scheduled programming, diving back into Ravenloft and the Grand Conjunction with a look from the Shadows. Another classic module from the one and only Bruce Nesmith. Should be a spooky good time. We hope to see you then.